My name is Charlie Landsman. I am the La Plata County Coordinator for Firewise of Southwest Colorado. We're a small nonprofit. We function in 5 counties in the Four Corners region. And what I'll be talking about is the majority of what we do, which is work with these neighborhood ambassadors. So let's jump to the next slide. Thank you. Basically, the role of these neighborhood ambassadors is we will have a primary contact person within these neighborhoods. In La Plata County, I personally have about 80 different high-risk neighborhoods I work with. And the job of the ambassador is to engage their community and educate their community and basically bring the community to the table. And then my role is to connect the community with both other communities and with the resources that they need in order to accomplish whatever their goals are, so that they can be as well prepared for wildfire as possible. Basically, either party can come up with projects that they see as necessary. So, you know, there might be something on the ground that is a big problem that the neighborhood ambassador or somebody within the community is aware of that we wouldn't see because we aren't driving through there daily, and they can bring that to us and we can get that solved. Or I might have a fire department say, hey, we need a community wildfire protection plan for this area because it really scares us to go in there. And then we can go and contact that ambassador and basically have an ally set up in that community so that we can do that outreach and continue to engage people. One of the big advantages of this is, you know, we really want to take this community-based approach where we are engaging everybody within the community. When you're working on private property, you're not going to get much of anything done if you don't have the buy-in from those landowners. And so by using these ambassadors who are within that community, we can not only engage these landowners, but it also makes our message a lot more effective because I might go and pass on information to one homeowner or one of our ambassadors, and that ambassador can go back to their community and share it with anywhere between, you know, some communities have 10 homes, some communities have 2,000 homes. So they can go and they can get that message out to a lot more people just because they're within that community and can share with their neighbors. So let's jump to the next slide. So the reason that the ambassadors work with us is we offer a lot of different benefits to them. We're engaged with the wiry research team in Colorado, and out of their research, we found that there are a couple of things that are the primary barriers to people actually doing mitigation work. And I like to break it up into 2 sections. It's what do we need to do and how do we pay for what we need to do? And so we've developed a lot of different programs to try to address both those issues, because like Pablo mentioned, it's all about removing these barriers. And we want to make it so that it's as easy as possible for people to go into their community and do the right thing. And sometimes it's just knowing what to do. So every one of our ambassadors goes through a 2-part orientation. That's the first step in order to become an ambassador. The first section of that orientation is when we bring in partners from usually the BLM and the Colorado State Forest Service, and they will share just some basic wildfire information about why fires are important, some of the ecological factors that play into it, what you can do as a homeowner to try to reduce your risk and make it safer for your home, but also make it so that it's safer for firefighters to go in there. We send out a monthly e-news, so we make sure that we try to have that people receiving information from us every month so that we're constantly building on the information that we've given them in the past. We have a fire council meeting every other month in Durango, where people come from all of our counties over to Durango in order to meet and share. And then we also host regular workshops. The most recent one was a home ignition zone workshop where we had about 15 participants and basically would go through how we do assessments on structures or how we do site visits so that they can go back into their community and they can start sharing that knowledge. And that ties back to that force multiplier. If I can have an ambassador go through and do, 10 assessments in their neighborhood, then that's going to be 10 more people who are getting that information. But it's also really important to have people learn from each other. A lot of our ambassadors are very creative and will come up with ideas that I never would think of. And so by bringing them into these fire council meetings or bring them into another setting where they're sharing with each other, suddenly somebody will think, oh, that could work in my neighborhood. And then they can learn directly from each other. So, it's not only connecting these ambassadors to professionals, but it's connecting them to each other as well. And then for the second factor, the financial support, we have a couple different primary programs. Our cost share program, where individual homeowners can receive up to 50% of the cost of mitigation work done back to them as a rebate if they hire a contractor to do that work. Our Kickstart program, which is basically for a new neighborhood or a neighborhood that we've just gotten an ambassador in, they can do some community-oriented project. Usually something like clearing a road right of way, or if there's a lot in that neighborhood that's community property, then that allows them to introduce people to the idea of fire mitigation. Oftentimes we hear that people are scared that they moved to this area to be around the trees. They don't want to cut them all down. And it just takes them seeing what a mitigated property looks like to suddenly realize, oh, I actually really like that. And then we also have mini grants. So I think we all know that it's not cheap to get the message out. So this can go to things like having a community barbecue, or to pay for a mailing, or a number of other things just to get the word out to those communities and remove some of that financial burden from those ambassadors. So let's jump to the next slide, please. Thank you. So there are a couple key factors in order for an ambassador to be successful. The first one is they have to make sure that they are educating and engaging the community. And the way that they can most effectively do that is to create social incentives, as I like to call them. The picture on the right there, the top one, is of a community where they actually make sure that they have work days at least every month throughout the summer. And one of the ways that they've managed to get so many people there is they have work from 9 to noon, and then they have a barbecue and beer all afternoon. And it's one of those things where, since people don't get burnt out, they will come back month after month after month to participate in these work days. And they will also actually travel to the area specifically for it. It's become this kind of community event. This neighborhood in particular has a lot of second homeowners, and so people will come to town specifically for a work day so that they can engage in this community event. Out of 90 homes in the neighborhood, they had over 80 homes represented at one of their last work days. So they've done a really good job of engaging these people through building that sense of community. And then also leveraging social capital. So, if somebody who isn't within this community comes in and tries to engage people, it can't always, or it's not always as effective as a neighbor going to a neighbor and saying, hey, do me a favor, and can you cut down this tree, or can you remove some of this gamble oak? So really just building on that sense of community and having those neighbors work together, because when a fire happens in these areas, it's not going to stop on one person's property. Finally, or another factor is communication. Communication is key throughout all of this, but it's important that the neighborhoods continue to talk to us about what they're doing, and similarly, we talk to them, and we connect the fire districts, the Forest Service, BLM, all these different agencies together, so that we're all talking about what's happening, so we can plan to mitigate the most effectively. And it's also important to take advantage of any available resources. So one thing that we found is oftentimes these agencies, especially federal agencies, will come to a time where they realize they have a little leftover money, and we encourage all our neighborhoods to have projects in mind, ready to go. So if there is ever a time where an agency says, hey, we have X number of dollars that we can spend on you guys, we can jump in and say, yep, we have something in place ready for that. So let's jump to the next slide. This is just an example of some of the different projects that we have. The one on the left side, the top picture is the before and the bottom picture is the after. That was one of our cost share projects this year. There's clearly a pretty significant difference. We also help people rent chippers. The air curtain burner that you see there in the middle, kind of, that actually was purchased by a community, which is leading into my next point, which is, if we could jump to the next slide. Oh, actually, well, okay, the challenges quickly. There are a lot of different issues when you are working with volunteers. One of the big ones is misinformation, especially when it comes to our cost share program, or when it comes to potential for somebody to get money back. We want to make sure that things are set up in a way where that homeowner is following the proper procedures so that we can reimburse them for the work. And we don't want the ambassador to unintentionally share information that makes the homeowners think they can do one thing when really we can't reimburse them for that. Neighborhood politics is definitely a huge issue. Sometimes people don't like their neighbors, and it is something where I've been at homeowner association meetings where people can't agree on anything, and we don't want fire mitigation to be one of those things. And that ties into, they really are a representative of Firewise, and so you want to make sure that they are a good representative. Luckily, I haven't had any ambassadors that we've had significant problems with. There have been some misunderstandings, but we want to make sure that we avoid that as much as possible. And then also, sometimes these next 2 points lead into each other. People oftentimes start off with what I'd say is too much energy. They think of it as a sprint and they just want to get stuff done, and they get a lot done, but then they burn out, and then a lot of that work isn't maintained over time. So let's jump to the next slide. Thank you. And this is what I was talking about with that air curtain burner. That's actually the same air curtain burner in the top picture there. But we want to make sure that we are creating self-sustaining systems within these communities so that they can continue to help themselves year after year. We understand that fire mitigation is not a one-time thing. It's not an event. It's an ongoing process. And so if we can help neighborhoods develop systems so that they can move forward with it, that can be extremely beneficial to everyone. One of the big issues is, how do you either go about finding an ambassador, or how do you continue to have an ambassador? To find ambassadors, really the way that I've found most of them have been referrals. Either the fire department knows somebody who calls them up all the time and is interested about smoke in the air, or interested about what's going on, or asks them out to help out. The fire department can refer those people to us. Similarly, private contractors who are working with neighbors can give me a call and say, hey, I have this person who is really interested in this type of work. But then once we have an ambassador, we really want to make sure that before that person leaves that role, they're nominating somebody else, or volunteering somebody else, or encouraging somebody else to volunteer to step up. Then also, some HOA boards have actually created a position on their board to say you're the Firewise ambassador. And then whenever we're called for a site visit, if we don't have an ambassador in that neighborhood, or if we could use another, we make sure to educate those individuals on what it takes to be an ambassador. And really, throughout those methods, in Southwest Colorado, where fire is such a important topic, we haven't had any problem either either gaining new ambassadors or continuing with having an ambassador within a neighborhood. So let's jump to the next slide. So that's pretty much all I have to, well, not all I have to say about the ambassador approach, but I think all that time will allow. There's my personal contact information. feel free to contact me at any point if you do have any other questions. And I'll go ahead and pass it off to the next presenter.